So hello, and I am here with Ian from 7Mesh, and Ian spends quite a lot of time behind a sewing machine.
It's true.
So first of all, just in case people watching haven't heard of 7Mesh, do you want to just give us a little bit of background on where the company came from and what you're about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started 7Mesh in 2013, but our first launch collection was in 2015. So we've been on the market for about 3.5 years now. We came from an outdoor background, designing outdoor apparel and hard goods and things like that. We decided that we're all riders. We've been riding for a long time, and we just thought there was an opportunity to do something really different in cycling and elevate the level of apparel, technical apparel, within that space.
And I think for people in the UK watching, they'll be interested to hear that you come from somewhere that is very similar weather to the UK.
That's true. So we're based in Squamish, British Columbia. I don't know if I would call the weather similar, but it's
equally wet.
It's definitely equally wet. I would argue that the UK is a little rainy all the time. Not all the time, but it has intermittent rain quite frequently, whereas BC we get 3 months of horrible rain where it's just like every single day is raining hard, and so it's relentless.
You haven't been to the UK or the north of the UK in the winter then, because that is what it's like.
I could see that. I did grow up in Newfoundland, so it's got also horrible weather.
So that is a good background then to go into outdoor apparel, and apparel that is going to be useful in, I think you said, you kind of started out with, you've got 7-hour stuff, or in the beginning anyway, you had like 7 hours where you look out the window and you know what the weather's going to be like, and then you've got 7-day where anything could happen.
Totally. So when we started 7Mesh, one of the things we were having the biggest problem with was we were kind of arguing about what we should make. So what should be our product range? Which product should we make? Should we make a jersey? Should we make a tech tee? Where should it fall in between? What it came down to for us actually came down to fit. And that sounds kind of weird, but it wasn't about riding a road bike and it wasn't about riding a mountain bike, because everyone in each territory wears different things. It came down to just people ride bikes. And some people ride fast. They want tighter fitting things. Some people ride slower, or they want more features and they want to wear different things depending on what they're doing. But there's so much crossover in cycling, but we tend to put clothing into these little pegs. Like it has to be a super sport race road thing, or it has to be a mountain bike enduro free ride thing, and so it gets put in these little boxes, and then no one's really sure what they should buy. So we organized it in our brains by 7-hour and 7-day. And so 7-day was like, it's got versatility. I'm going to go do a cycling trip in Europe, say, and I need a jacket that I can wear both on and off the bike. I want hand pockets. I want vents. I want breathability associated with it. I could still wear that same jacket because it's got the looser fit mountain biking, because it kind of has more versatility. It's got more durability associated with it. 7-hour is like, it's done in a day. It's light and it's fast. I know exactly what I'm going to do for that day. So, I wake up in the morning, I'm going to go for a ride for a couple hours, and I'm like, it is raining today, and I'm going to do a road ride. I'm going to take off my bike and do that. That could still be the same, say, if it's a jacket for like an outerwear piece. That could be the same jacket I'm going to wear on a cross-country mountain bike race that's going to go really fast and the weather's horrible. The same piece would apply. I'm still going to want it to be tighter fitting. I'm going to want it a little bit aerodynamic, and I'm still going to need a high level of breathability with the output. So that's kind of where we threw the categories, and that gave us a rough framework of where things should fit in. So in some ways, it's been really interesting to see people's progression with our brand and our product range. And we'll have people come in and be like, look at the product. They've never seen it before, never heard of us, and they'll go, "Oh, this is great road biking stuff. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how good this is." And then literally the next half an hour, 15 minutes, you'll have someone come in and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, this is great mountain biking stuff. Holy smokes, it's great." And then you have someone come in, "Oh, I'm going to buy this for my gravel bike." And we never once say it's a mountain bike piece or a road piece. And that's been somewhat confusing, but also really interesting to see how people use bikes in different areas and how they view themselves as riders within that apparel category. So it's a bit of a social experiment at this point in time, but it's been quite good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you said you started with the perspective of fit and functionality for that fit. So, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the kind of key areas in the pattern and how you go about designing it?
Totally. So, for us, we're a very hands-on design organization. So, everything we do is we build all our own patterns, all our own prototypes, everything in-house. So, and I think there's a lot of value in the process of going through that. Some people are like, oh, we'll get a sample sewer and they can sew a product for you and speed up your efficiency and all those things. And I actually think there's a ton of benefit for the person who's actually working on the style, creating the pattern, understanding how that fabric's working, understanding how the fabric works with the pattern, understanding where it's not working, and then being able to make those changes. So the time it takes for someone to sew up a garment is really, really important. And we used to always say, our background's at Arc'teryx, and they've got a very interesting design process as well. I don't know if that's changed in the last 5 or 6 years since we haven't been there. But, when I started working there, it was very much, there was a standard that was kind of set that you needed to sew your prototypes at a very, very high level. And the factory, because we had our own factory at the time, it should take them at least a couple of hundred products in the factory to get to your level of execution. Right. And so that was a lot of pressure for people to be able to sew at a certain level and be able to execute at that level of expertise.
I definitely wouldn't pass.
So it takes a long time. So, and you make lots of mistakes and you have lots of prototypes that don't work. And we go through quite a few. So, for every product we design, we might, if it's just a quick version that we're doing of something else, it might be, 3 to 5 samples we might make. And then once we have it done in its entirety, we'll send that to our partner factory, and then they'll produce the first counter sample at a factory. Some styles are more complex, and we might do 30 samples, or we might not really have dialed what it is. But, typically in that design process, it starts with a fabric, and it usually starts with a problem that we're trying to solve. So, for example, you're trying to either make the garment more dry, or you're trying to make it breathe better, or you're trying to make it more versatile. And usually, there's different characteristics in each one of these fabrics that are going to make that work really, really well and work better. So you're always trying to source new yarns, new ways of looking at those fabrics. You're using knits in some applications, using wovens in others, and there's really big performance differences between all those different things.
Yeah, so I don't think I appreciated that there's more to it than it's Gore-Tex and it's the right colour and it's cut right. Like you were explaining this morning about the different properties of fabrics and then how you can mix the yarns and the weaves and stuff. To me, that was really interesting, yeah. But it also explains there's a lot more thought goes into a product design than just grab some Lycra and stitch it together.
Absolutely. And so one of the things people don't understand is that the cycling industry is it's been around for a really long time. It's rooted in history. It's got this wonderful, beautiful history associated with it. And ever since the early to mid 70s, people have been printing on jerseys, and that's been it's been really race focused. You need your sponsor logos on them and this kind of thing. So, but what's happened over time is these fabrics, they're called PFP fabrics. So they're polyesters. There are some nylons you can print on, but it's a more complex process. And they're what they call PFP, so it's prepared for print.
Right.
And so if you are looking for PFP fabrics, your scope of what you're looking for all of a sudden narrows dramatically. So you have, instead of having this many fabrics to choose from and select, you now have this many to choose from. So automatically, just by deciding from the get-go, I need to print on the fabric, you have now limited the scope of what you can do technically with the textile. So that's come through history in cycling. And what's also happened is people have introduced Lycra since the early 70s, mid 70s, somewhere in there.
I think I've seen people wearing that original Lycra. Yeah.
That could be. Lycra's got a bit of a shelf life, so you got to watch out for that. But those materials are essentially polyurethane elastomers. Polyurethane is hydrophilic, so it absorbs water. So you'll get a lot of water pickup, comparatively speaking, to polyesters or nylons in that polyurethane yarn or fiber. And so that will inherently have a lot of moisture. Everyone has felt a Lycra jersey. If you pick up one with really high Lycra content, you're like, oh, it kind of feels cold or damp. And that's because it literally soaks up a ton of water.
Right.
So that's great, and that goes into fit. If you're looking at someone and you're trying to make a garment really aerodynamic, for example, the easiest way to make it really aerodynamic is to shrink it. And you just make it smaller and smaller. And there's a lot of research and education goes into these time trial suits, so I'm not
we should point out it doesn't necessarily make the person inside any smaller, does it?
Correct. Yeah, it's you're either fast or you're fat, or you feel fast or you feel fat. So there's definitely something to be said for that, and that depends on which day you're riding, I'm sure. So those materials are really interesting, but if you just keep shrinking the garment, you're not necessarily patterning the garment into the correct position. So a bike is a really tough position to design clothing for. You have to try it on in the change room, and it has to feel really good, and not too tight in the chest, and all these things. And then you've got to go into a riding position and bring your arms forward. And inherently, that just makes the front of the garment sag and bag out. So what people might feel really good standing upright in doesn't necessarily work on the bike. So you've got to kind of educate consumers that, hey, it's tight in the chest so that it fits perfectly on the bike. And you've got to kind of work with that. So, we don't not use Lycra, but we try to avoid it when we're making a garment, that's a technical garment, then we're trying to manage moisture with it. So we have quite a few different jerseys that have no Lycra in them, and we're using techniques where you're mechanically spinning yarns and then unspinning them so they become like little springs. And then that allows those yarns to stretch and then bounce back without having, a yarn or fiber in there that absorbs a ton of water. And so, you're using those in different applications and in different areas. So, and we also try to pattern the garment, even if it's a jersey, instead of just shrinking it, adding Lycra to it, so that it works really, really well in those riding positions. And then bottoms, on the contrast, have a huge challenge. I mean, you're trying to pattern them, not so they look really good when you're standing up. You want to do it so your legs are moving. So we pattern everything into sort of this articulated position where they're articulated at the waist. If they have knees, that's a whole other challenge if you're doing tights or leggings, and we've got a whole series of pant stuff we're working on for next season it's really, really hard to solve those problems.
So really, if we want to buy some 7 mesh, we should be trying it on in the changing rooms, like on a turbo trainer or something, shouldn't we? On the bike.
We say you need to assume the position, which is questionable, but that's the term we generally kind of use, and it's really important. And a couple of companies have done like change room posters to try to teach people how to do that, and it is really, really important for people to make sure they try on cycling clothing, make sure it fits really well on the bike.